Welcome back. Well, it had been put off, but now it's on a fast track. Development on Alberta's $8 billion Kearl oil sands mine had been in jeopardy when last week the federal court failed to reinstate its development permit. Environmental groups had gone to court to question, among other things, the greenhouse gas emissions that would result from the project. But despite the court's decision, now the federal water permit that the Imperial Oil needs for the mine, well, apparently it's been fast-tracked, and the Harper government could approve of it within weeks, allowing the development to stay on schedule and start this summer. Well, as you might expect, environmentalists aren't too keen about that, and they have something to say about it. So joining me here in Ottawa, Stephen Hazel. He's the Executive Director of the Sierra Club of Canada. Stephen, nice to have you back on the program less than a week ago. I think it was last Thursday or Friday.
Yes.
We were talking about the court decision to not reinstate the water permit that Imperial Oil needs. And you were talking as though you thought you'd won something, but I'm wondering now if you think maybe you didn't win very much at all.
Well, you may be right. We had hoped that the federal government would take this opportunity to reconsider this authorization to destroy fish habitat and incorporate some measures, technologies to reduce the enormous greenhouse gas emissions that are going to come from this Kearl oil sands project. Maybe they're not going to do that now, so it seems. But I mean, if they're going to fast track it, they may well just be fast tracking it back into federal court.
Because that means you'll take them back into court again?
It could be. I mean, we're very unhappy with the so-called addendum that came out of the environmental assessment panel. The judge had ordered that the panel take another look at the greenhouse gas emissions, and she couldn't understand how it worked, how it could be that putting the equivalent of 600,000 vehicles on the road is not significant in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions. So we don't think that the panel answered the judge's question. So we may have to test that again in federal court. We'll see.
And I guess, though, the interesting thing is, this is really about water, but you're concerned about greenhouse gas emissions. So, I mean, I understand how you can tie them together, but really, you were fighting in court, weren't you, about water, and this is actually the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Sounds
right.
Funny in Fort McMurray, where you don't see too many fishing boats tied up, but it is a navigable water, and so they need a permit. But you're really concerned about the greenhouse gas emissions rather than what will happen to the water sources around the Kearl mine?
Well, we're concerned about all of the environmental effects, including the destruction of fish habitat. But the decision that the federal court took focused on the greenhouse gas emissions. And so that's the point that is being emphasized now. The federal government has an obligation to look at all of the environmental effects when it's doing these studies, not just the impacts on fish.
So, what I'm just trying to think how this will work. If now the water permit is given, the project starts again, then you go back into court and you go back over on greenhouse gases, not on the water permit or not on the fast tracking.
Well, it really is. It's all about whether or not the panel did what the judge asked them to do in the first place. If they didn't, then the process is still flawed, and then any authorization would continue to be flawed. I want to make the point, Don, that the federal government promised 6 weeks ago to get tough on these tar sands mines. They said, we are going to require tar sands mine to store their carbon, to have these carbon storage and sequestration projects. Well, that's 4 years from now, they're going to have those rules in place. Why not take the opportunity now and test run some of these rules on the Kearl project?
That's an interesting point. You also said, I think when we were talking before, you thought the court decision of last week would impact on other projects beyond Kearl, but now if it's going to be fast-tracked, I assume that maybe it's not going to have any impact at all on any other project.
Well, I still think that the court decision will have an important impact in terms of forcing the federal government and the provincial government to look more closely at greenhouse gas emissions from these projects. These are huge projects that generate incredible amounts of greenhouse gases, and now I think we will see more attention paid to this. I mean, it is something that the federal government has said that it wants to do. It's said that it is going to regulate tar sands mines so that they will actually have fewer greenhouse gas emissions. So it's something that in a policy context, John Baird and Stephen Harper have said that they want to do.
Very interesting. Stephen Hazel, thanks for this.
Thanks, Don.
Now, stay with us when we come back. Ted Kennedy goes home to Cape Cod. Don't go away.